Yo guys, this is Reinhardt, your favorite Russian talking, and today we're going to be doing a review of Star Wars The Old Republic PvP. It's going to be a full detailed review where we're going to be talking about multiple things and see if the game is actually going to be worth our time. In this game, I'm going to actually give a ratings and talk about what kind of PvP does Star Wars have and participation of it. What kind of combat does the Star Wars have, where the balancing come from. I'm going to talk about the class design, gearing, and of course leveling in the game as well. When it comes to rated PvP, Star Wars does have their non-ranked battlegrounds / war zones and skirmishes, which are 4v4 arenas. For the ranked, there are only arenas 4v4 and skirmishes, and there used to be war zones but they took it out. Nevertheless, getting high rated as a solo queue is also pretty awesome. But the design itself is actually very unique. They have a cool mechanics like hot ball, where you can actually throw the ball and kind of play mini American football / soccer. The environment itself is actually very interactive. You knock people into the slime pools and they die that. You stun people on the fire nodes and they die from fire. You knock people off the bridge and you actually kill them. Having every single class access to those knockbacks and stuns make it a very even environment and really enjoyable. This is the only time when I said the smaller is better, probably, but in this case the war zones themselves are much smaller than World of Warcraft war zones or even a Rift Battle of Warfronts. What that makes it, if the smaller the war zone, the more fights are there in the center and there are more action, and they are actually a little bit more intense than any other war zones, warfronts out there. Zones are very complex that they literally can actually crap on the newer players because there's a lot of terrain involvement is there. So my final rating for the war zones for Star Wars, I would rank them at about 8.5 out of 10. A very solid design. Different types of the things I want to talk to here about arenas. One is meta versus design. So design of arenas is we're gonna talk a little bit later, but I first of all want to talk about arenas meta and why I fucking love the meta in arenas this game. So the meta is very simple, my friends. You have 4v4 arenas where you have a tank, a healer, and 2 DPS, and you're like, what the hell, a tank? Well, tank is the one that makes the arenas are freaking enjoyable in this game. What happens is the tank has a spawnable guard, which provides a 50% damage reduction, and he spams it every single time the target gets swapped to. And because of that, the healing in the game is not as strong. And what that promotes is it promotes a very smart CC, because there is no spawnable crowd control mechanics in the game. What happens is the DPS, to get a kill, they have to either control the tank, switch to healer, kill the healer, or control the healer, control the tank, and swap to DPS and kill it. And basically what happens is, because tank always puts a guard on one target, 2 DPS on the enemy team can't tunnel vision and always have to swap their targets that don't have a guard. Otherwise, essentially what's gonna happen is they will do a lot of ineffective damage and they will fall behind. Which kind of brings up to the memories of Wrath of a Lich King or even the Burning Crusade, from what I heard, because there you also required to do a constant swapping and no 100% to 0 training. Meta is freaking fantastic in the game. When it comes to design of arenas, it's kind of a bit so much. I would say arenas are a little bit above average. They do offer a nice design and a lot of like cool line of sight places, but essentially it's a bit above average experience for me. And what I noticed that some of the arenas benefit range a little bit too much, and some of them actually benefit melee a little bit too much as well. But usually it's mostly range in this game. My total experience in arenas is really positive in this game, but when it comes to arena design themselves, it's a little bit above average. I think could have been done a little bit better. But when it comes to meta experience in the game itself, when it comes to arenas, my experience there is actually 9 out of 10. Very outside the box thinking, enjoyable meta, and enjoyable pace of the combat. My overall experience when it comes to Star Wars PvP is about 8 out of 10 when it comes to designing the arenas, designing awesome maps for war zones, and amazing meta for arenas themselves. They fucked it up. You know, like guys, it's every single game out there does a lot of awesome good things, but then they will fuck up somewhere, sometime, that, you know, any game is bound to fuck up, right? So in this case, this is the most negative thing about the game I'm gonna say, and I'd rather make it in the beginning of the video and be a bit upfront about it, but it's not as bad. Anyway, so the participation, that's the biggest detractor for this game. They removed the ranked war zones, even though the participation for those was even higher than actual rates from what I heard. But the biggest problem with the game is that it's actually been built on the old Warhammer servers, Warhammer Online servers. And for those who don't know what the hell is old Warhammer Online server, it's basically a server that only allows cross-server queues. I mean, not within the server queues, meaning that you only queue against the people on the same server. And for the game that is not as bloated as WoW, basically it's a big no-no, because the game has to be like, it has to have a decent participation to keep on going. So in the beginning of the seasons, in the beginning of the expansions, the participation for arenas are amazing, but then it kind of dwindles down because a lot of people start sitting on their ratings. There's no rating decay, and to top it off, you can only queue within your own server. So that means that the actual group for Team 4v4 is usually sometimes starts lacking, but the ranked skirmishes still pop relatively fast. So the game is absolutely amazing, but the participation system that they made is a total trash. So my total actually rating for the participation in Star Wars, and that's including that there is no really good tournaments going, but there are a community run dueling tournaments, which is actually pretty awesome, but no official tournaments, no cross-server queues, and basically no rating decay and removal of a Warzone. I will rank it and give it a 2 out of 10. Really poor, really bad design. But that's the only negative portion I'm gonna give about this game, which is just boggles my mind, that how can they make the game feel so amazing? The leveling in the game is amazing, the class system that I'm gonna be talking about it, the combat is amazing, the meta system is amazing. Yeah, they just fucked up on participation. Now let's talk a little bit about the combat itself. So this is one of my high level sorcerers here, and what I want to say is that first of all, there is absolutely no spawnable crowd control, which makes actually meta is very enjoyable, and it's actually very dependent in terms of you actually have to think in order to get out of your CCs, and if you scrap with your CCs and they're not on point, you are not gonna get high ratings, so which makes it a lot interesting as well. And essentially, with the combat itself is relatively slow. You don't really do a lot of damage. The max I've seen here is coming up is should be around like 20 possibly % of your HP. That's the max ability I've ever seen, and it requires a really good setup. Now the max ability, one-time ability that I've seen, was about 30 to 40% of your HP, but it is made by a sniper and he has to cast, sort of like a Chaos Bolt. So with that said, is if you actually let the sniper get it off and you're not gonna line of sight or actually pop your defensives, you are deserving to be marked, okay? So there's nothing wrong with the ability doing a lot of damage if it requires a lot of setup. At least that's the way I like to look at it. Now every single class have a decent amount of defensives, every single class have a kind of a pinpoint when it comes to homogenization, is that every single class essentially does have a stun, a knockback, and some sort of a disoriented. So and obviously they also have a roots as well. Now a few classes have a longer cooldowns and a few classes have a shorter cooldown, but the bottom line is the meta itself is always going to be the same. You literally have always on every single class will have a stun, will have a knockback. Now with that said, is am I really liking it? Absolutely not. I would prefer actually having experience where each class would bring something unique to the table and pretty awesome to the table. But on the other hand, I understand, so for the balancing purposes, one class will get severely behind on utilities, and utilities, that's what makes the class OP or not. And if one class severely lacks in utilities, that means the design is flawed itself. So what happened in this game is, instead of homogenizing the damage, homogenizing the DPS rotations in this game, it's quite the opposite. They homogenize the CC and utilities in the game, which by far is not the worst thing they could possibly do. I do think that they could have come up with a little bit more of a creative ways of actually not homogenizing that. But with that said, is when it comes to rotations, every single class have a different rotations, different priorities, different buttons, and a lot more to press than in World of Warcraft, and we'll talk about it in the class design itself. Let's give it a summary, my friends, in terms of Star Wars PvP for the combat itself system. So the strengths for the combat in Star Wars is first of all balanced utilities, having that every single class have a disorient, have a stun, and have a knockback. While it does homogenize, it also provides a balanced utilities to make sure that not every single class is way out of line. It does have a solid damage versus solid healing numbers. So essentially, as a healer, you will fall behind and you don't heal. I don't feel like the threshold of a healing in Star Wars is just as high as freaking World of Warcraft, essentially. And then unforgiving to Dicklebergs. If the people run aside, if the people overextend, if the people do something stupid, they will get punished for it and they will die. While CCs are very strong and defenses are very strong in this game, they don't guarantee your survival at all. Weaknesses are though, first of all, I haven't noticed a healers or even casters to essentially run out of mana to some extent. Mostly healers never run Homogenized CC, just like I said, everybody has it. And in Warfront, I kind of find it actually a little bit hard to be a melee class, simply because there's a lot of range classes running, and as soon as a melee charges, everybody starts focusing them and they melt down, unless you have a pocket healer, which is standard for a lot of MMOs, but it's kind of a shame that it wasn't addressed in Star Wars. My total experience when it comes to combat in Star Wars, I would say it's a good 7.0, a decent pace, and honestly the few points have been taken away, like being a melee versus range, and being ranged a little bit and feeling more superior. And also there are some RNG numbers out there, but nothing too outrageous. Now my friends, let's talk about the classes and class design itself. So there is 4 main classes in this game that can be split into 2 subclasses, which will have eternal 3 specs, meaning there's total about 24 specs in this game. But the best way to explain the classes, or to start explaining, is actually by showing you. So let me get on my Juggernaut. Right, so first of all, remember how I told you guys there's a homogenization when it comes to utilities. Every single class have their stun, like a force choke. Every class have a disoriented, like this guy has AoE fear. And it's pretty awesome. Every single class almost have a knockoff, and a little bit of a variations that are different, but it's pretty much the same theme over and over. Now, that's the thing, but when it comes to outside of that, each class have their own specific utilities, which makes the game actually more balanced. For example, Juggernauts or heavy plate warriors, in this sense, they can actually taunt the targets. And every single time they taunt, the targets do 30% less damage, and it lasts up to 6 seconds, 50-second cooldown. So basically the utility that warrior brings is, he brings up what it's called, even on the damage meters themselves, is protection. Essentially what's gonna happen is, the less damage they do because you taunt the enemies, all that damage is recorded as a protection damage, and you can see how well you actually perform or how well you improve. Outside of that, when it comes to rotation, this is Juggernaut, which is equivalent of the warrior, legitimately has a 13 button rotation. If you look here, this is my main cooldown rotations I put over here. We have 3 plus 3 plus 3, 9. And then we have about 4 here that I actually use every single time. Now that's literally a 13 button rotation with the different elements that affect different abilities. This is not a mindless spam. You always have some kind of a choice in this game whether you should be using one ability or the other. For example, as a warrior right over here, I have the idea to actually go for the single target damage as much as possible via Impale, Ravage, or I can actually apply a long lasting bleed dot on a target and then spread it with the AoE. There is no really a specific DPS rotation, which makes the gameplay style a very selective and very enjoyable. Because the game is harder to play, because the classes are harder to play, the great players are gonna be rewarded. And while there is some sort of a cannibalization in this game where each spec will fight against its other spec when it comes to for the arena spots, it's not gonna happen all that much, because in this game we have a skill that is a top priority of the player, of their class, of their character, then the next one comes in the actual class they play, or the spec they play. Where in World of Warcraft, it's kind of the opposite. No matter how well you can perform, if you're outclassed severely, there's not much you can do to win. And that's why everybody hates World of Warcraft. This is quite the opposite. If you actually are a good player, and you actually do everything well, you will be rewarded. Good example, I see some potato juggernauts that do only 600 DPS. Me, myself, I get up to like maybe 1800 DPS, but I'm also a little bit under geared. I'm actually rocking the honor gear. And then I saw some badass juggernauts. They've been playing for a long time. They're absolutely amazing players, and they pulled up to 2600 DPS on their juggernauts. So legitimately, the top players do 4 times more damage than the bottom barrels. And that's how it should be. People who actually know how the rotation works, and then who don't play with the mashing a dick on the keyboard, should be rewarded for that. So my final answer for the classes, and what I think about the classes and the class design in this game, I would rank it as about 8 out of 10. And the reason why I'm not giving it 10 out of 10 is because I do feel like range has a bit of a better advantage than a melee in this game, and it happens almost in every single game. And particularly melee, we're talking about the warrior classes. The second reason I'm actually thinking I'm giving it 8 out of 10 is because I wanted to see a little bit more creativity than generalization of the CC abilities across all the classes. But I understand how they tried to make it balanced. Outside of that, every single player that actually played this game at the competitive level, so this game is extremely balanced. So that makes me actually want to play the game, try to commit to it, and see how it's gonna turn out. When it comes to actual gearing experience, Star Wars definitely have the best gearing experience I've ever seen in my life in general. Period. There is absolutely no contestant about that at all. So first of all, there is a baseline honor gear, which is very easy to get and anybody can actually possibly do it. Now that honor gear does not have the best stats. To get just a baseline honor gear takes about, I would say, 25 battlegrounds total, tops. And you're all set, you're running in a full honor set. And it's really easy to do it. And even though you kind of feel a little bit less powerful in general, keep in mind that you legitimately get boosted even without having an honor gear. Honor gear is just kind of icing on the cake when you reach the max level. So at this point, this is how the mods work in this game. Each piece of gear, except for waist and wrists, have 3 pieces. 3 different mods that can be put into that, and each mods have a vast variety of customizations. Now the biggest trigger part is you see how this gear itself is orange. Any mods can be put in there. If you can put a heroic mods in that and make that piece of gear epic heroic rating, or PvP, very high rated PvP gear, and make it extremely best in slots for PvP as well, it essentially does not matter. But the way the mods work is you put the mods in the gear and the gear scales up according to the mod's item level. Here, my friends, is where you can literally see the example of a PvP gear in action. So first of all, Warzone recommendations. For you to actually buy the preliminary set is very inexpensive. We're talking about, well, 9 plus 3 plus 2, 14 items. 14 items times average, I would say, price is about 300. So 300 times 14 items, that's about 4,200 Warzone recommendations. You get about 150 per Warzone. So it takes about, like I said, 20 to 25, 26 Warzones. And you get the gear here, but it's not the best stats possible. For example, for my Sith Juggernaut, I need power, I need surge rating, I don't need alacrity, which is haste. And basically I get those and I really don't need them. My second step that I need to do is to actually get those honor pieces and over here trade them for tier 2 PvP. Now you don't have to have a ratings, which I kind of don't understand. I rather have some rating requirements, but you don't have to have it. So there is some kind of gear progression. And even then, it's still not going to take away my orgasmic feeling towards the gearing in this game. So, and the item rating is only 6 levels high. So I'm wearing 168, I can buy 174. Obviously, with expansion coming on today, there's no really point of doing it. But regardless of that, so I'm buying a tier 2. Tier 2 still has those stats that I don't really need. So with that in mind, here are the mods that I can actually purchase separately, essentially to actually augment the stats that I want, and I get it here. So basically, here's how it goes. To get a startup PvP gear, it's extremely inexpensive. To get a tier 2 PvP gear, it's extremely expensive to do it. Because HPs then will cost 2000 for the weapon, 800 for the freaking earring, like 1400 for the gloves. It's extremely expensive. That alone will cost you around like 15 to 16,000. But to fully max out all your stats and everything else in this game, essentially you'll need about 25,000 Warzone commendations, and that's a lot. While that is a lot of Warzone commendations, keep in mind a couple things, my friends. The very first one is there's no cap at all in this game, so it will take you maybe 1 week or 2 weeks to get the max gear, and you enjoy your PvP a lot. So there's no such thing as, okay, well, this week I'm gonna do cap, next week I'm gonna do cap, third week I'm gonna do cap, or stuff like that. Let me suck this killer off just so you could play with me, just so I could get my cap faster, or something like that. So none of that shit is literally happening, and essentially you are at your own discretion, you are your own boss. If you want to be a lone wolf, it's a perfect way to do it. But that's not it. The biggest orgasmic thing about this game after that is actually very simple, my friends. So my warrior is going to be first in hitting 65 level, and he only has 2800 Warzone commendations. So you're like, well, you're far behind, right? And the next thing I'm going to say is, no, my friend. I am not very far behind, because I have a sorcerer. And in this game, you can literally transfer Warzone commendations from one toon to the other toon, and so on and so forth. So while my warrior has 2800 Warzone commendations, I'm actually logging on my sorcerer, and I'm gonna show you how, and we'll see how many Warzone commendations I have here. So here, if I open my currency tab, I have 10,000. So that puts me at about 13.6k honor point. After that, if you look at my alts right here, each and one of those have about 1500 Warzone commendation points. Across all my alts and everything else, I have about roughly 20k Warzone commendations. And once I start leveling, I'll be queuing a lot of Warzones. I'm pretty sure I can grind 4 or 5,000 on my own. Basically, the way it works is there's every single day you get your daily Warzone commendations. That you get fuck tons of those. Having alts in this game doesn't hinder your main progression. It actually does the opposite, because each of your characters get a daily for PvP and weekly for PvP. For you to max out those Warzones, it's piss easy. A good example, there is one weekly that gives you 450 Warzone commendations, and then one daily gives you 150. In one day, if you have 12 toons and you cap all those 600, and you'll need, let's say, 4 war zones on average, you're literally gonna make 12,000 in one day, just capping every single one of your alts. Playing different toons, playing different classes, learning how to play different classes makes you stronger player, makes your main stronger. And once your main is fully geared up and you keep pushing that rating and you keep making that honor, you can always transfer the honor points to your second main or your alt, and then another alt, and so on and so forth. Basically, the gearing system here is perfectly defined. Nothing goes to waste, everything can be sent out to a different toon, and that makes people stronger. And actually makes more enjoyable to play, because gearing system, while it's very relaxed, it's also very demanding, and there is a lot of customization you can have, and essentially having alts in this game actually helps you progress, not degress. So my final vote for Star Wars gearing system is legitimately 10 out of 10. Best gearing experience I ever had in my life, to be honest. Possibly the best gearing. Well, one thing I don't like, and it could have been taking the points away, but if it would have, I would have ranked it 11. The twinks. There are twinks in this game. People who PvP a lot can send their alts a bunch of honor, and they can buy like a twink level 55 honor gear, and pretty much plummet through entire content to people very, very fast and effectively. And yes, that is not enjoyable, but everybody can do it to some extent, and it's not very difficult to do. It doesn't require grind dungeons or anything else to twink out your character. You just have to PvP a fuck tons, which is kinda understandable. But overall, solid, best gearing system possible, where you get the feeling of a progression of your character within the gear and everything else, but at the same time, you're also having a lot of fun. Now last thing we need to talk about, and this is going to be a very short and sweet, and it's also another 10 for this game. And 10 right now, but it's probably going to go down to 8 in my opinion. And that's basically leveling. Leveling in this game is enjoyable. It's enjoyable to have alts because there is a different storylines. As you progress, you have your own specific storyline where you travel between the planets and you literally being ultimate badass. Each class have a different system and different role they have to fulfill. For example, as a warrior, you participate in the wars, you go rampage, you kill your own master, and you gain the power, you become the Emperor's Wrath. As a sorcerer, you kind of pretty much doing the same thing, except for you don't participate in a lot of fun, so being an errand boy. That's one was kind of a boring storyline to actually experience. But then as Imperial Agent, you literally feel yourself like a fucking James Bond. And there are literally like 3 types of different like choices that you can make that will affect your ultimate later experience in this game. And as a bounty hunter, you overall just a freaking a cowboy, an outdoor jackass. This is my bounty hunter. It's just a lot of fun. Each dialogues actually has fully voiced over. Everything is fully voiced over. Each of your companions actually contributes. You can actually make the companions like you or not like you. You can give them gifts, you can talk to them, and essentially you can even romance them. And you have a lot of one night stands, which is always a plus, obviously, right? So with that said, the leveling is just enjoyable. It doesn't feel like a chore. And eventually in between that, you will do some PvP. You get your dailies for the PvP, and essentially there you are. You're having fun. You're doing dailies. You learn the new classes. The classes also help you because they contribute kind of a buffs to your main character. And essentially it's enjoyable. It is very enjoyable, the leveling system. Except for right now, everybody gets a 12 times more experience boost because of basically them playing this game. Them essentially doing the main storyline progression. But it's gonna go away, so that way I think the experience is gonna kind of dwindle down. Also, shit like hunting datacrons is not very enjoyable. It's a little artifact you have to pick up that will give you about 2% extra stat boost. And also, the more alts you have, the more buffs you can have here. So essentially the way it works is your Sears Juggernaut can have a Bounty Hunter, Imperial Agent, and Sears Sorcerer buffs. So obviously you need to kind of at least get everybody to a chapter 2, which is a level 40-45. It does take time to get it, and I would have objected it. I would have fucking hated it, except for I freaking love it because it is fun. The decision's fun. You choose your affinity over here. You either become a dark alignment or light alignment. For example, you can see here, my friends, I cannot make up my mind. I'm more of a dark than a light here, but at the same time I also I just don't know what to do. So with that said, the game is extremely enjoyable. I highly recommend everybody who is actually trying to play it right now, play this game. Now, when it comes to costs, let's talk about the cost here really quickly. The cost of this game, are you ready for this, is a subscription fee of $15. You can play the game for free, you can try it for free, but it's not worth trying it for free. In my opinion, it's actually worth trying and playing this game in general with a subscription. So what I did is I unsubscribed from World of Warcraft and I subscribed to this game because I personally thoroughly think that this game is more enjoyable. And this is the reason why. Let's break down and talk about the actual ratings of this game, the standalone ratings of this game versus World of Warcraft, and how I compare the two. So the final grades that we have here, we have PvP 8 out of 10, participation, which is the worst, it's 2 out of 10, the combat is 7 out of 10, the classes feel about 8 out of 10 in terms of design. Gearing, like I said, I'm very satisfied with the gearing in the game. I gave it straight up 10 out of 10. It's possibly the best thing about this game. And then leveling, obviously it's very enjoyable, a bit grindy, but it is 8 out of 10. The total score I actually gave Star Wars is 7.16 out of 10, which is a very solid and great experience ever possible. Quite frankly, I am not inclined to talk shit, and I am not by any means a sci-fi guy. I like fantasy, I like swords, I like magic over lightsabers, blasters, and some fucking lightning out of the nails or out of the toenails of an old lady. But in that sense, I find this game a lot more enjoyable to play than other its competitors. And how does this game stack against WoW? So when it comes to WoW, first of all, I gave WoW PvP experiences about 3 out of 10. by far the worst experience ever possible, and nobody can deny that at all. One thing I'm gonna give WoW is they have the best participation. Their community managers are engaged. Holinka PvP designer, he's very engaged with the audience. There's a lot of community run tournaments and the company supports them as much as possible. Needless to say, they also have a great way of having completely queues, cross server queues, plus on top of that they have arena server queues, arena tournament servers, and participation is by far the best in World of Warcraft. But the combat in World of Warcraft is lacking. It's very monotonous. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of diversity. The class design is on its own the lowest possible denominator. The gearing system in WoW is mediocre-ish. That's why I gave it about 4 out of 10, because you know what? These weekly caps are suckish. And keep in mind that this is the review during the Worlds of Draenor, not the actual Legion that we're all waiting for, and they actually are addressing a lot of these concerns during the Legion. And obviously the leveling system in WoW, I also gave it a 4 out of 10 because it is a mediocre experience, not even close to the level of Star Wars. So my friends, if you want to check out this game, definitely check it out. I'll be streaming. I think I'm having a lot of fun in this game. For those who are actually thinking of coming back, I do have a referral link in the description down below. Use the referral link, you'll get a free transfer, you get a 10 extra inventory slots, and I get a bunch of other free shit as well from the game. Why the fuck not? But overall, the game is enjoyable, the game is a lot of fun to play. The classes are very, very unique, and this could have been a go-to PvP right now while the WoW is down. And people, this game would have actually blossomed while WoW PvPers actually quit World of Warcraft if they had a participation under control. If they would have run the community tournaments more often, or the tournaments like BlizzCon more often, and if they made a cross-server queues, this game would have been a huge contender for World of Warcraft and PvP. But even now it is, and I think Legion could be a better MMO than this game. But at this point, right now, this feels more enjoyable. This feels like a Wrath of a Lich King / Burning Crusade, where your rotation really matters. The class that you put in and the thought you put into your character actually pays off. So anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching my video. Thanks a lot for looking at it. I understand it was a 30-minute video, but I had to make it. So, thank you everybody, and до свидания.